Ons vind nou uit hoe dit met die Suid-Afrikaanse sitrusbedryf gaan en Justin Chadwick van die Suider-Afrikaanse Sitruskwekersvereniging sluit by ons aan vir hierdie gesprek. Good morning, Justin, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on your show.
Justin, I would like to start with the current state of affairs regarding the citrus industry.
Very recently, the Citrus Marketing Forum distributed our estimate of export volume estimate for 2021. And that's showing that we've got about 160 million cartons, which will be available for export this year. That's up from 146 million last year, so it's quite a significant growth. And we see that trajectory continuing into the future. We do a 10-year model every year, modeling what's going to happen in the future, and we see that volume increasing in the next 5 years up to about 200 million cartons. So it's an industry on the move. Also, very recently, we increased our levy in the industry, and the growers are investing about R1 billion into research, transformation, and market access in the next 4 years.
And did the COVID-19 pandemic have any impact on this specific industry?
Most definitely. You'll remember this time last year, there was a whole deal of uncertainty around. We were just going into the pandemic. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. And as an industry, we could see that the peak of the first wave was going to coincide with the peak of our industry's volumes. So we really worried. We're a very labor-intensive industry. So the pandemic was obviously making people get sick and having to isolate or quarantine. And our big concern was that if that wave happened as we were in the peak of our harvesting, we might find that we wouldn't have enough people to harvest the fruit, pack the fruit, and also obviously in the supply chain downwards through the ports, etc. So we were seriously worried about that. And as a result, we formed a CGA COVID response committee, which met every Thursday throughout the season and right up from basically April till September, and tried to be proactive and look ahead and see what sort of risks we were facing and address them before they happened. On the positive side, we've got a product that is full of vitamin C, and with many people seeing vitamin C as a remedy for colds and flu, we actually saw that there was an increase in volumes of citrus sold, mostly in the Western world. So in other words, in the European Union, UK, and the USA.
And what are some of the other challenges in terms of the citrus industry?
So our biggest challenges revolve around market access. So I've just spoken about the big increase in volumes, and what is of concern is if that same volume just goes into the same markets and you don't get any growth, you will see returns starting to decrease. So one of our biggest challenges is market access, getting access into more markets so that fruit can be distributed to more places around the world, and also optimizing our market access conditions. So in other words, making sure that the conditions of entry into those markets is favorable for our fruit. The second biggest challenge was around logistics. So in other words, transporting the fruit from the growing regions to the port. You must remember that many of our production regions are a long way from the port. Take Letsiteli and Limpopo, for example. It's 900 kilometers to Durban port. And so really the issues there are around what transport mode, trucks or rail. And we're talking a lot with Transnet Freight Rail to move more of our fruit onto rail. Because it's much more efficient, and with on the roads with trucks, you've seen what's happening in terms of congestion and in terms of the state of the roads themselves, and then the port infrastructure itself. So the equipment in the port is aging. The maintenance has been poor. They need new equipment. They haven't been keeping up with the increase in volumes. And so logistics is really our big concern. If we're going to be continuing to grow like we are, we need more investment in our ports. We need better efficiencies in our ports to get that fruit through the port. And then also on the logistics side, we need equipment, containers. If you don't have empty containers coming into the country, you've got nothing to put your fruit into. So we need more containers coming in for this crop, and there we're dealing with the shipping lines and trying to make sure that exporters have sufficient containers and shipping opportunities.
Now, with that in mind, how does the local citrus industry compare to other countries or the rest of the world?
Yeah, South Africa is the second biggest exporter in the world, although we're the 10th biggest producer, so we're very export orientated. Spain is number one in the world, and then in the southern hemisphere, obviously, it's important the season, because citrus it can't keep from one season to the next, unlike some other products. So it's important to be counter-seasonal to the bigger producers. So in the citrus world, most of the big producers are fortunately in the northern hemisphere. But in the southern hemisphere, we do compete against South America, specifically into North America and into Europe. And then we compete with Australia in terms of going into Asia.
Is there anything else that you would be able to point out regarding imports and exports?
Yeah, on the import side, we don't import a lot of citrus, and we must realize, being counter-seasonal, we actually aren't against imports because it comes in and it makes sure that citrus is on the shelves throughout the year. So there is some imports coming in from Morocco, from Spain, from Israel, etc. And we actually welcome that, because, as I say, we want consumers to consume citrus throughout the world, throughout the year. But on the export side, there are a lot of challenges there in terms of the phytosanitary side. In other words, making sure that we don't have pests and diseases accompanying our fruit overseas, and that's where the big investment in research pays off. To ensure that, for example, with citrus black spot, which has been a big issue in the European Union, that we can ensure that we are compliant with their requirements and that our fruit gets over there without any of the citrus black spot on the fruit.
And how would you describe the industry's contribution to the agricultural sector in general?
Yeah, the citrus industry is the biggest exporter in agriculture in terms of value, and also the biggest employee in the sector. So it's a big player in the agricultural sector, and we work more and more closely together with the other sectors in various organized agricultural settings, etc. It's important that we as agriculture grow together and make sure that our sector is significant to government, is significant to South Africa, and is significant to the economy.
Any opportunities regarding the industry in the future?
So we've got a lot of irons in the fire, as it were, in terms of market access. I explained earlier that market access is really important. We need more market. So this year we've got the Philippines opening up. So we'll have our first containers officially going into the Philippines this year. The two big ones for us really are the USA. At the moment, we only have access for the Western Cape and the Northern Cape. However, we've had an application in for the rest of the USA for a number of years now. And unfortunately, it's been stuck in some sort of political difficulties. We are hoping that the new Secretary of Agriculture in the US will sign that off, and that'll be a significant change for specifically our soft citrus exporters, because there's a big demand for soft citrus in the USA, and also for our grapefruit exporters and perhaps mid-season oranges. And then the second big one is China. At the moment, our protocol in China really doesn't allow us to send lemons in because of the cold treatment requirement. Lemons are very susceptible to cold. We also there have a final protocol that just needs a signature of the Chinese plant health minister and our own minister. And we're hoping that will be concluded in a not too distant future, so that we can get more lemons into China. Mm-hmm. The other ones are perhaps not as big. India, we have a change protocol there, and Vietnam, we're hoping to open up that market in the near future.
Any other developments that you would be able to point out at this stage?
I think the big thing about agriculture and about South Africa in general is that we've spoken about growth, but we haven't spoken about inclusivity. And really, we've got a big drive on to increase the number of black growers in our sector, to make them sustainable and make them profitable. So the CGA formed a CGA Grow Development Company some 5 or 6 years ago to supply support to those growers in terms of technical support, business management support, etc. We do have a significant number of black growers now, black growing entities in the industry, and we've got some exciting projects with, for example, the Jobs Fund that will see those areas under citrus in black hands increasing. We also have a Citrus Academy that looks at human skills development, which is also essential in terms of transformation of the sector.
Justin, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Dit was dan Justin Chadwick van die Suider-Afrikaanse Sitruskwekersvereniging.